everyone, my name is Shauna. In case you don't know, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about asexuality. I identify as asexual, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience of how I came to identify as asexual and just give you some overall things like that you should know about asexuality and how a relationship can work with asexual people. So first of all, what is asexuality? So if you type in asexuality definition onto Google, two different definitions pop up. The first one is the quality or characteristic of having no sexual feelings or desires. However, this wording personally isn't the wording that I would use to define asexuality. This is technically the definition that you'll find when you look it up online, but to me, asexuality is a lack of sexual attraction. This is a pretty much agreed upon definition if you talk to anybody who's asexual. The second definition that pops up on Google is the quality of reproducing without the fusion of gametes. So this is basically asexuality in terms of like the biological world and not in terms of like humans. So this means that certain animals can reproduce without having a mate. So it's very important to distinguish between what you will hear about in biology as asexuality and what you'll hear about in the human world and how it applies to humans. The reason why I don't like the definition that pops up for asexuality on Google is because asexuality has nothing to do with enjoyment of sex or engagement in sex. The reason I say lack of sexual attraction is because asexuality means that you don't feel sexual attraction to other people. You may feel romantic attractions, however you may not. And you could enjoy sex, you could have a sex drive, you could engage in sex to please your partner, you may like to pleasure yourself. Like there's so many different sexual activities that people can still do if they're asexual. It just simply means that we don't feel sexual attraction towards other people. Now there's like varying different levels of asexuality. Well, levels isn't the right word, different categories. So you could be sex repulsed, which is what I am. Sex repulsed people generally aren't engaging in sex, they are disgusted by sex, and even from there it varies because there's a difference between like personally how you feel about engaging it and if you feel like comfortable, say, watching a movie where there's a sexual scene and those type of things. And each person is individual with their asexuality and how it comes to play in their life. So for me, I'm a sex repulsed asexual, meaning that the idea of me having sex personally really repulses me. However, I can handle watching sex scenes in movies and reading sex scenes in books. Occasionally I get a little uncomfortable watching them, but even though I am fairly comfortable watching them, it doesn't take away from the fact that I am asexual and that I don't feel sexual attraction towards anybody. There's also sex neutral people and sex positive people, and people engage in sex for a variety of different reasons if they are asexual. You could enjoy it, you could want to please your partner, and it's completely okay to be engaging in sex and still consider yourself asexual. I did hear recently of this term gold star asexual. However, if you hear anyone using that word, I'd encourage you to just ignore it and not focus strictly on what that is. So gold star asexual is someone who is asexual and a virgin. However, it places a huge emphasis on being a virgin. It raises it up as something to be proud of, and it makes it seem like you're this perfect asexual if you're a virgin, but that's not the case. And also I just feel it's completely disrespectful to people who were raped or sexually assaulted or forced into having sex and regret it. Asexuality can be a label in and of itself, but it is also an umbrella term. So it includes things like demisexual, which means that you don't feel sexual attraction to anyone until you develop a close bond with them. And it can also include gray asexual, among other things. One thing that I feel is important to note is that sexuality for a lot of people can be fluid. So label only works for the time that it works for you. It's okay if you identify as asexual for a period of time and then suddenly you develop sexual attractions and you realize, oh no, I'm actually heterosexual, I'm homosexual, I'm bisexual. Anything like that is okay because sexuality can change. It's not going to be something where it's just a straight line, it's very firm, you stay the same way your whole life. Like, it can change, it can vary, and that's completely okay. Another important thing to distinguish is the difference between romantic attraction and sexual attraction. I sort of find it a little hard to define what romantic attraction means because a lot of people don't understand it. When I've tried to explain to people that I have romantic attractions but I don't experience sexual attractions, a lot of people have said, oh, you just want to have platonic friendships or just like a best friend. That's not really the case. Romantic attraction means that people still will want to go on dates, will want to get married, will want to be really close and deeply invested in someone more so than a friendship. People who experience romantic attractions could also want to kiss, hold hands, touch each other, but not engage in sexual activities if they choose to. So there's varying levels of attraction and love that you can feel towards people that varies, and some people don't have all of these. So you have romantic attraction, which I experience, but not everyone experiences that. Some people are aromantic. There's sexual attraction, which I don't experience, and a lot of other people who are asexuals don't experience it as well. And then there's also platonic love, friendship love, and there's family love. There's a lot of people who are hateful towards asexual people, and when there's hatred toward asexual people, it is either called aphobia or acephobia. I prefer aphobia because aphobia takes into account that aromantic people could be experiencing this hatred as well. Aphobia is actually more common than you think. There has been a lot of places that have been supposed to be safe spaces for LGBTQ+ people that I've been a part of, and I've experienced aphobia in those groups. We live in a society where the society pushes onto us that what it is to be normal is to be heterosexual, heteromantic, and cisgender. So whenever one of those changes and is deviant from the other ones, then they can face hatred. So there's a lot of people that think that sex and sexual attraction is something that everyone must engage in, that everyone must experience. However, that's not the case. So people like to claim that we just haven't met the right person yet and that we will meet the right person. However, that is extremely, extremely ignorant to say. That is not the case. We most likely will not magically become straight when we meet the right person. We won't just develop sexual attraction when we meet the right person. As I said, sexuality is fluid, so every once in a while that could be the case, but generally if you're asexual, you're not just going to magically become sexually attracted to people because you met the right person. There's also a lot of people that try to exclude us from the LGBTQ+ community because they think we shouldn't be part of the community. A lot of people surprisingly think that it just goes LGBTQ and then you stop right there. However, that A is in there for a reason. The LGBTQ+ community involves people who deviate from what is considered normal by society. And asexual people fit into there because we aren't heterosexual. A lot of people also like to think that the A in LGBTQ+ stands for ally. However, it stands for aromantic, asexual, and agender. I think part of the reason why there's so much aphobia towards us and why there's so much lack of understanding about us is that we severely lack in representation in media. It feels like we're very slowly starting to get more trans and gay representation and bisexual representation in movies and shows. However, asexual representation is really, really lacking. I have read very few books that have asexual representation in it, despite me going out of my way to seek out asexual books because there aren't many out there. A lot of asexual books that I find actually are about someone trying to convert someone to be straight or gay. And it is disgusting and it's awful and it's perpetrating this harmful message that we can be changed, but that's not the case. We can't be changed. Yeah, if our sexuality naturally changes, it can change, but it's not something that we can just go, oh, I don't want to be ace anymore, well guess what, I'm gonna be gay now. That's not how it works. And in TV and movies, I've only ever seen one character that was explicitly asexual, and shows a lot of the time also erase asexual representation. So, for example, Jughead from Riverdale was asexual in the comics, but they erased his asexuality for the show Riverdale. I think if we had more representation, more people would understand us and aphobia would decrease, but unfortunately that isn't the case yet, which is why I'm actually in the middle of writing my first novel. I don't know if it'll ever be published because I'm really slow at writing and I always say I'm gonna do stuff and then it never happens. But anyways, in my book that I'm writing, the main character is asexual because I wanted to raise awareness for that and talk about the reality of what it's like to be asexual. If you want to date someone who's asexual, the most important thing to do is talk about the asexual person's boundaries. As I said, there's some people who are sex repulsed and some people who are sex positive. If they're sex positive, they might want to engage in sex with you. However, if they're sex repulsed, they most likely won't want to, and that's completely okay. It's also okay to not want to date someone because they're asexual. Because for some people, sexual attraction is a huge part of relationships. And if you really highly value sex that much, then maybe dating someone who's asexual isn't the best option for you. However, it doesn't mean that it can't work if you really desire sex that much. You can request to have an open relationship. If the asexual person says no, you have to respect their opinion. An open relationship would be where you would be dating the asexual person, and then you would be able to leave and have one-night stands or friends with benefits with other people. Not everyone is into that. I'm personally not into that. I wouldn't be comfortable with that. However, that is a solution sometimes to cope with the fact that someone might not want to engage in sex with you, but they want to date you and you love them in that way, but you aren't going to engage in sex with them. And that's okay. It is a different dynamic than what people normally think of when they think of what a relationship should be, but it does work for some people. As I was saying though, if this isn't going to work for you and you can't date someone who's asexual, it's completely okay to not engage in a relationship with them. However, don't be explicitly aphobic when you are trying to end the relationship. Those are basically the major things that I want to cover about asexuality. So now let's talk a little bit about how I came to find out that I'm asexual. When I first experienced my first ever romantic attraction, I didn't know that there was a difference between sexual attraction and romantic attraction, so I thought, okay, great, this means I'm straight. By the way, I'm not even heteromantic. I just quickly put this label on myself because everyone at the time had labels and I felt like I had to have a label on myself. So I didn't understand the difference between romantic attraction and sexual attraction. I actually faked having sexual attraction at several points to try and fit in because I didn't know anyone else who was asexual. I felt like there was something extremely wrong with me. I couldn't figure out why everyone was claiming to have sexual attraction towards people and being interested in people in this way that they wanted to engage in sex. And it just, the whole idea of sex repulsed me, and the thought of me doing it repulsed me. I faked having sexual attraction, but it still repulsed me, and I still was like, something's wrong with me. I don't understand what in the world is going on. When I was 18, I read a book, and the book had an asexual character. That book was Found a Night by Ben Alderson. There was a paragraph in that book where an asexual character was talked about. It was talked about how they didn't experience love in the physical way. They experienced it in a romantic way. It was this whole paragraph, and I was deeply moved, and I realized, that's me. That's what's going on. It made me realize that you can have a different romantic attraction from your sexual attraction. And for the first time in my life, I had felt like my attractions toward other people were summed up really well. And that was like the key changing point in my life to having me accept myself for who I was. If I had had education about asexuality and exposure to it before I was 18, I'm sure I would have accepted myself sooner, and I wouldn't have spent years wondering what was wrong with me and why I didn't feel any sort of sexual attraction or sexual desires toward other people. But now I understand myself, and I can comfortably say that I'm asexual. And it took me a while before I felt comfortable enough to publicly go out on YouTube and say, I'm asexual, and be okay with that, because I was so scared of judgment. I was so scared that I was going to wake up and discover that I was wrong about this and that I was actually different sexual attraction. So it took a lot of time also about learning about sexuality and about how sexuality can be fluid before I felt more comfortable saying this and saying anything about any sort of identity that I have. Because yeah, right now I'm asexual. Could that change 10 years down the line? Possibly. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm asexual right here, right now. The only other thing that I really wanted to mention really quickly that I forgot to mention earlier is that if you are asexual as a result of sexual trauma, you are completely valid, and that is completely okay. Asexuality happens for a variety of reasons, none of which you can control. It can happen from trauma. It could just be the way that you are, the way that you were born. And that's okay too. And it's okay if you're in a relationship with someone, there's sexual things going on, and you realize, hey, I'm actually asexual. Guess what? You're completely valid. You can have sex and be asexual. You can be in a sexual relationship and be asexual. You could be in a relationship with no sex and be asexual. You can be a virgin and be asexual. As you can see, asexuality looks different for everybody, and there's no right or wrong way to be asexual. There's nothing that can invalidate the fact that you are asexual. If you're asexual, guess what? You're asexual, and that's fantastic. That's great. And I think asexuality is so beautiful because it's so different and unique from what society deems is normal and right. You are your own beautiful person who's different from other people, and no one can take that away from you. And you can still experience love for other people, whether that be romantic or friendships, and that is fantastic. So this was all that I had to say about asexuality. If you have any questions about asexuality, feel free to comment them down in the comment section below. I will maybe be doing a Q&A where I answer some questions about asexuality in the future. I'll link a couple articles down in the description below that also explain asexuality. It might be good resources if you're questioning yourself. There's tons of quizzes online that can help you figure out whether you're asexual or not. I also highly recommend joining asexual support groups. I found some on Facebook, and those have been very beneficial to me. I was experiencing aphobia just a few days ago actually, and it was starting to negatively impact me. And so I changed which groups I was interacting with on Facebook. I found support groups, and I found hundreds of people like myself who are asexual, and that has been such a lifesaver to me. It's brought me so much joy and so much comfort to understand that there is hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions, if not more people out there who understand me and what I'm going through and the attractions that I experience. If you would like to subscribe to me, you can, but you don't have to. I don't talk about asexuality too often on here. However, I do have a video that I uploaded previously talking about asexuality and demisexuality rep and books, so I will have that video linked down in the description below as well in case you are interested in some books that I've read that have asexuality in them. I hope all of you have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see all of you in my next video. Until next time, goodbye!